Chapter 25 Lose. Not until we are lost do we begin to understand ourselves. Henry David Thoreau. For years I was a real loser. I lost my keys, I lost my wallet, and recently I seem to have lost my favorite pair of shoes. I've looked everywhere for them. In my request for people's stories of everyday spirituality, a few people sent me stories of lost items or lost people being found. At first reading, these examples seemed trivial and I dismissed them out of hand. Then I lost my favorite shoes. I searched for them in all the usual places: my closet, the basement, the trunk of my car, the garage, under my desk at home, under my desk at the office. I even grilled my wife, convinced that she had something against those shoes. She never liked them. I bet she threw them in the garbage, I grumbled to myself. But the lie detector test submitted at our local police precinct proved she was telling the truth. She didn't know where the shoes were either. While this whole scenario is tempting, I want to reassure the listener, this is all fabrication of my imagination. This is stupid, I thought to myself, and finally gave up on the endeavor. People lose things all the time, but usually only for short periods. Your wallet, your purse, your keys, your phone, some money, a favorite tool. The list of misplaced or lost items could go on and on. The emotional intensity and frustration around a lost item can be enough to make us do or say the craziest things, like force a spouse to submit to a lie detector test over lost shoes. But what about getting lost? It's one thing to lose your keys and be late for work, but entirely another to be in the car driving at night on unfamiliar roads without the help of GPS, and losing your way as a result. This was the story sent to me by Astrid. My husband and I had been invited to spend the weekend with some friends. They had just moved to Vermont and lived in an old farmhouse they renovated on about 20 acres of forested land. We intended to leave early enough to beat the Friday rush hour traffic out of Hartford. But that didn't work. It was late autumn, and the darkness quickly overcame us, especially in the Green Mountains of Vermont. My friends had given me excellent directions, plus we had our cell phones with us and planned on using GPS. Unfortunately, in the darkness, it became near impossible to read street signs, and as is typical in New England, sometimes there are no street signs. Then as we made our way deeper and deeper into the mountains, our cell phones stopped working. I guess AT&T doesn't have adequate coverage in Vermont. We pressed on ahead, in the hopes of finding a road we could identify. Hours later, we ended up sliding off a gravel road, down an embankment. We weren't hurt, just shook, and I think my husband was embarrassed. But we saw a house with its lights all lit up just ahead. So we walked to what we thought was our friend's farmhouse. We knocked on the front door and an old man answered. It was not our friend's. We explained our situation. He looked at our directions and laughed. Apparently, we were miles and miles from where our friends lived. It was too late to do anything, and so the man invited us to spend the night in his home. We called our friends on the man's landline and explained the situation. The next day, our friends came and found us. A local tow truck pulled our car from the ditch, and we were on our way for a shorter weekend than we'd hoped. Every time I tell this story, people always ask me if I was afraid at any point. I honestly wasn't. This is unusual for me because I'm a very nervous person. But somehow, even when we were sliding down the ditch or walking to the cabin in the woods, I had this unusual, at least for me, calm, that God was with us, and everything would be all right. Whenever I get nervous about something now, my husband likes to remind me of the time of being lost and not being nervous. For many years, psychologists held to a theory that some people just have a better sense of direction, an intuitive understanding of where they are, and which direction is the way to safety. This theory even included an idea that people somehow sense the direction of magnetic north, which explained why they were able to navigate their way. More recent research, however, has leaned toward the theory that people who don't get lost as much tend to be better at tracking their surroundings. In short, they pick up on environmental clues to help them keep their bearings straight. Perhaps on a hike, one notices the direction of water flow, the growth of moss on the north side of trees, and direction of shadows at different times of the day. In more urban environments, while driving, one might notice particular stores, the names of intersections, and the direction of traffic flow. Most theorists view this as an acquired knowledge over time and familiarity with one's surroundings. But when you take someone out of their familiar surroundings, as with Astrid and her husband, who are accustomed to driving in an urban setting, put them on rural mountain roads with no common markers, and turn out the lights, you can understand how they got lost. Being lost is in many ways the first step on the path toward spiritual maturity. It's the ultimate experience of losing control, and perhaps that's what's happening when we are lost. What we've lost is our illusion of control. There is a great deal of emphasis on the missionary zeal of Christianity around the idea of people being lost. This energy has focused on saving so-called lost people through an evangelistic fervor and conversion. Historically, Christians have sent missionaries to faraway lands in the Amazon or parts of Africa to save these lost people. I think we have misunderstood Jesus and his teachings around lost. Jesus often speaks of a need to reclaim something that has been lost, denied, ignored, or forgotten. We have interpreted these sayings through the lens of a manifest destiny approach to conquest, rather than reading these passages as teachings around bringing the realm of God into our hearts, minds, souls, and communities. No doubt there is an external aspect of Jesus' teachings, but let's reclaim the internal significance as well. The act of redemption can be both an outer process as well as an inner one. The most well-known parables incorporating the word lost are found in Luke's gospel story of Jesus. There are 3 stories of lost and found. One, the parable of the lost or prodigal son, is quite well known, so we're going to examine the other 2. The first story that Jesus tells is to a crowd of Pharisees, a legalistic bunch of church folk upset that Jesus is hanging around people of questionable reputation. In response to this challenge of spending time with outsiders, he tells this parable. Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Luke 15:4-7. At first glance, this parable makes absolutely no sense at all. Why would anyone, let alone a first-century shepherd, leave his herd of 99 in pursuit of one lost sheep? The risk of putting those 99 in danger would be too high. But these parables are not meant to teach technical solutions for the shepherding problems of the day. These are stories to help people wrestle with their spirituality. The early church thought much more spiritually and metaphorically than we do in the 21st century. The shepherd has a herd of 100, clearly a number depicting a complete or whole group. Losing one suggests that the herd is not perfect, so of course the shepherd goes off to find the one. Without the one, there will always be a sense of life being incomplete. We know this feeling when we lose something like a pair of shoes, or worse, only one shoe. But this is about more than lost things in the outer world. I think Jesus, through Luke, is reminding us that part of our life task is to seek wholeness. What does it mean for us to pursue a lost piece of ourselves? Perhaps you've lost a sense of purpose in your work, or your energy for marriage has dissipated. What would it be like to explore this lost aspect of your life? The second parable revolves around a lost coin. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." Just so, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Luke 15:8-10. On the one hand, from our 21st century point of view, we may wonder, what's the big deal? It's only a coin. We may be thinking of our stash of coins in the car ashtray or in that drawer in the kitchen. But in first century Palestine, it was different. It's possible that these coins were a part of a marriage ceremony or dowry for a future wedding. The single silver coin could have more significance than its value of approximately 1 day's wages. Again, we have a sense of the whole, 10 coins being disturbed with the loss of a single piece of silver. This woman desires to bring everything back together. She lights a lamp and sweeps the house, suggesting that the coin might be in a dark place or in the dirt of the floor. Frankly, I love the imagery here. Is Luke suggesting that sometimes when we lose a part of ourselves, we might need to shed some light on the matter? Or maybe when we find the precious silver, it will be in the dirt? Reflecting on the way that previous people thought about these parables in spiritual and metaphorical means, the 4th century church father, Gregory of Nyssa, notes that in this parable, quote, "the coin is to be found in one's own house, that is, within oneself," end quote. Like the parable of the lost sheep and that of the prodigal son, there is a celebration over the reconnection. What was lost is now found. I know you want to default back to thinking about that last line about a sinner who repents. But I want to remind you that a sinner is often used for an outsider. And the word for repent is the Greek word metanoia, which is a word about change. We're still talking about bringing something that is outside back into the whole group. And often change is a crucial factor in that reunification. I have a friend who, after 20 years of marriage, lost his mind. Or so it seemed to all the people around him. Bored with work and the routine of life, he cast aside a marriage, children, and his career to follow another woman to a new city. In what seems to be a familiar story, after the fun wore off, he returned home, embarrassed, ashamed, and desperate. I remember sitting with him in a coffee shop after his wife amazingly welcomed him back home. "I don't know what got into me. It's as if I was looking for something. I thought I'd found it in this new affair, but that's not what I was looking for either." We sat for a long time and talked. In the end, I pointed out the number of times he said he was looking for something. As I write this book, he's still searching, but now with the help of a wise guide. I hope that as he gets down in the dirt on the floor of his soul, there will be some light, and he'll find that coin. We've gone from lost shoes to lost in the woods to lost treasures in our soul. What's clear is that losing something or someone could even cause us to lose our minds. But in another way, perhaps the experience of loss is an opening to a new beginning. I'm suggesting that loss sets us on a path where we are open to learning something new about ourselves. Astrid learned that she could be calm while being lost in those Vermont woods. She discovered a valuable life lesson that she has applied, albeit grudgingly, to other times of loss. My friend is learning that he has a grace-filled spouse, while he's spending his life searching for a lost treasure. The experience of loss can be one of those everyday spirituality moments that leads us to lessons about ourselves and the people around us.